Welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I am so grateful and honored that you are spending your time with us for this show. And this is episode 301 this week. Last week, we crossed the 300 mark, and I'm so excited about that and so proud of all of the amazing guests that I've had on, and I'm so honored and grateful. Maybe you've listened to the show, you've shared the show, you've subscribed, or you've been one of my amazing guests. I'm just so grateful from the bottom of my heart that you've been part of the show in some way. So thank you so much. I also have to give a big shout out to my team. I couldn't do this without them. They're so amazing getting all of the back end work done, and even by my assistants that get people booked on my show and do all of the emails and all of the things that go into actually producing a podcast. There is a lot of work to doing a podcast, but for me, it's been one of the most amazing and fun things I've done in my business. I've built incredible partnerships. I've met some of the most phenomenal people that I probably wouldn't have been able to meet otherwise, and I've developed a lot of wonderful friendships as the result of my show, and it's also helped grow my business. So it's one of the strategies that I teach my clients to be able to bring in really high value, high level clients. So I highly recommend, if you're not doing a show and you're trying to grow a business, having the right strategy in place. It can really impact your business as well as impact other people's lives. So thank you for being here. We're doing a mashup show this week. We did this last week. I took clips, or I should say my team took clips from many of the episodes where I had expert guests, and we did a mashup, and we're doing that again this week because we could not get them all in 1 week. So we're doing the same thing. I like to call these the golden moments of my guest, and I'm just, again, so grateful that you are here. So I hope you enjoy episode 301, and I hope you will continue being part of Expert in You podcast and enjoying the show. Just the guests that I've had on, it's been amazing, and they give gold when they are on the show. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart to all of you, and I hope you'll keep listening. Well, you are singing my song that you help them write a book, and then they can turn that into other revenue producing products, because of course I help people do that. And I love that. That isn't something you actually do, but you get the book.
Right. It's all set up for that. And so I think, Anne, we're so closely aligned on so many things.
I know.
I really believe in doing things right the first time. And so our process to write a nonfiction book allows that. But then you should be able to take that intellectual property and make it more. And I know that that's where you come in and do some things along those lines and stuff. So, entrepreneurs, we have limited time, and we don't have time to waste. So our clients have found that this works really well for them to both do it right the first time and then to get other products out of it.
And I really want to dig into this too, Nancy, because first of all, I absolutely love what you're doing. And I was a client of Nancy's many, many years ago Nancy.
I looked back today and it was in 2017.
What was it? Oh, I thought it was way before that.
Or 2016.
It had to have been
earlier than that?
That's not right. No.
Okay. All right. Well, a long time ago.
Space. Yeah. I know it's been probably 10 years.
Oh, okay.
When I wrote my first book.
Yeah.
And so yes, I was one of Nancy's clients, and that's how I actually got to know Nancy. We're in the same local market, and we got to know each other through networking. And then I actually worked with her when I did my first book, but her business has also really evolved, as mine has as well. And so it's really fun to see what you're doing now, because I remember, Nancy, I'm going to go back here for a minute.
Okay.
And I remember our very first conversation when you got on a call with me, and you said, what is your goal for your book?
Right.
And I said, I want to get on more stages. I want to write it for credibility. I also want it to be a piece that can help people in their businesses. And that right there, Nancy, is gold, because a lot of people do not write a book that is going to further their business or further their revenue.
Right.
They write a book. It doesn't a lot of times even further their speaking career, if that's what they're trying to do, because they're writing something that's motivational. And like, people are not looking to spend money to bring in motivational speakers any longer. Corporations are not looking for that. They're looking for content rich speakers, and they're looking for people that can bring real value to their organization. And so I love that this is the space that you're working in, because it's such a credibility builder when you have a book that leads people right to you. You should welcome challenges, because that's where the greatest things happen.
Well, it's through the struggle that we really find the gold. I mean, it really, and it's not success that we learn from. It's from failures or redirects. Like, this was simply a redirect.
Yes.
Okay, I have an Amazon Prime show that's gone. So what do I do next? And then all of a sudden the phone started ringing, and then I realized I really love magazines, because who's on magazines? Celebrities, thought leaders, really powerful people, and there's only 7,500 of them in the U.S. That means there's a lot of room for more magazines. So I have no competition, and that's how I see it.
I love it.
And it's fun, but there's just something magical. People ask me all the time, how do you get celebrities and thought leaders on your magazines? It's simple. I ask. I ask.
And they're willing to come on.
They are, because they're magazines. There's a cachet with them because they're so permanent. And there's a recent study, I can't remember which media company did the study, but people who read magazines, they believe 78% more if it's in print than they do digitally.
Oh, that's really interesting, but that makes sense. Absolutely.
It does. So these, of course, are digital and print, but I just, when I started doing magazines and people started coming to me, I realized, wow, they really don't have a brand. And you have to have a brand to do magazines. So that's when I usually just hold back on branding for only people who do magazines. And then my coach goes, "What are you doing? You're leaving money on the table." And it's just like, oh yeah, you're kind of right. So, and I love it. The branding process is so fun, because it's really clarity, and it's fun to see the light bulb go off for people, because they're so close to what they do. They can't see the forest from the trees.
So true. And it's really hard also to navigate all the things, right? There's so much out there. People get really, really confused. One of the things that I really want to dive into with you is the power. Like, people don't realize that in marketing, there's the power brand, which is the foundation for your business. It's building out those assets that are the long game. And then there's also the short-term marketing. You have a couple of events that I think you've just filled, or you're getting very close to filling. And that's your income coming in. That is your cash flow. And people don't realize that it takes both of those things. You have to be making offers. You have to be selling things. That's the short-term marketing. But then you also have to be building and establishing a presence, a brand, again, those assets. How you got into working with accountants and CPAs, people that have practices and firms, sort of in the accounting world, because I know you've coached a lot of different kinds of businesses through the years, but you've landed on this, and you even have a really cool program and sort of method called Profitable Practice Pro. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more. But Paul, how did you kind of land in this world?
And from a coaching perspective, because I'd lost a business due to consolidation in an industry, and had rebuilt myself and built other businesses and helped other businesses survive. And whenever somebody was struggling, they would say, "Well, just give Paul Roy a call. He's done it. He can help you out of it." So it just sort of, people started arriving on my doorstep, and I said, "Oh, this kind of feels good." And so I was doing it as a side gig for a while, and then it was it's actually 9 years ago, it would have been, Ann, that we met, that I stepped aside and said, I'm going to do this full time. I'd owned an office products business, a printing business, a yachting facility. I mean, an entrepreneur at heart. And I knew the struggles of entrepreneurs and wanted to be able to help them. And I felt that because I'd lived in their shoes, that I could help them.
I love it. So now you really have kind of dialed in working with CPAs and accountants, and you've been doing that for a long time, helping them build more profitable practices and run really smoother businesses and really get their life back. I mean, working less than 40 hours, because a typical accountant or CPA works 70, 80, 90 hours.
If you're with one of the big firms and you want to grow to be a partner, yes, those are the hours. Even mid-sized firms under contract, minimum 45 hours a week, right in their contract. That's how hard you work. So, and what happens is, and this is where it got me, is that accountants who are technicians working in the big firms and in the systems were saying, hold it, I'm only getting 55 cent dollars for all the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go out and do it for myself. And then they land in business as technicians, not as business people.
Yes.
Enter Paul. So then, that's one of the first questions I ask them. Do you want to be an accountant or do you want to be a business owner?
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, they say, yeah, I want to only do a little bit of accounting with some of my favorite clients. And I love to hear that. Oh, who are they? Who are your favorite clients?
Yeah.
Why do you like them? So, so then and so it gets into that. So it's, and often, that we hear this, the 80-20 rule, and it exists in accounting practices too. These accountants are making 80% of their money from 20% of their clients.
Yes. And they don't realize it.
And they don't realize it.
Yes.
People do understand that systems should help them be more productive, more efficient, which in turn will eventually help their bottom line. But sometimes they put it together in a very piecemeal manner. And you're right, the systems don't talk, or they see this cool new app they can use. And then
Right.
they have, but then they have different departments or units or, however they're structured. These guys are using Slack to communicate. These guys are using Skype. These guys are using something else. And then, but it's all just very compartmentalized. So it does help. One of the things really that does help a company is if you can simplify that. So it's really a matter of just, starting with where the business sees their biggest issue, because there's always work to be done, but, so you might as well get something that is a real pain point for them, and sorting through what are the processes they have in place and which ones are effective, which ones aren't even being used, and then identifying the gaps of which ones they need to put in place. And then, as part of all that systems work, you need to figure out who all is using the processes, who it needs to communicate with, who needs to have access to that. So, and it's not always just a matter of implementing a new piece of technology. I mean, it could be something on a sticky note if that's what works,
Right.
but you have to make sure that communication is occurring and everyone's getting what they need to get their part of the process done.
Right. So what are some of the pain points that you see with companies when they sort of have this disconnect, or they don't have things implemented? It's not smooth. Talk about that a little bit, some of their problems.
So some of the common problems, and almost every company will go through this regardless of their size. I mean, you'll start to see maybe you're working really hard and you're making more sales. So your top line revenue is bigger, but you're noticing that your profit, your actual dollars coming, that you have as profit, are going down.
Right.
So you've got decreased profit. You've got maybe an increase in customer complaints because things are getting dropped. People are dropping the ball, not necessarily intentionally. You've got quality issues, maybe not delivering on time. You've got just, inconsistency and that type of thing. Oh, and then one other thing that people don't often think of as related to processes is employee retention. So if you start to see, that you're getting a lot of employees leaving, you might want to think about maybe there's an issue with your onboarding process.
What it is you do now in your business, and really kind of how you got here. So I'm just going to give you the spotlight and let you talk.
Perfect. Well, I should probably go back to my pivot point then. So in 2018, I was in a horrific car crash that should have taken my life and thankfully didn't. And those near-death experiences have a way of waking us up and realizing, okay, if this life was over, is this the story that I want to be told? And I felt like I left a lot on the table. I was home with the kids. I had owned a finance company before and hired myself out of a job so I could be a stay-at-home mom. And there are stay-at-home moms that slay it. It was not my calling. And I just felt guilty and kind of shameful that I didn't thrive in that environment more. And so I kept trying to do more, thinking that would solve my problem. Maybe I just need to get involved more, or coach this team or do that thing. And none of those things worked. This car accident happened for me, for sure, and allowed me to be like, okay, Jen, who are you? And why are you here? And what are you doing? So 2019, the year after the accident, became a big year of the bucket list. what do I like? What am I interested in? What do I want to try? What am I not interested in? And I started like breaking my life into decades and thinking, okay, well, these things are going to be easier to do when I'm younger, and these things are going to be easier to do when I'm older. So museums and stuff, I'm sorry, those are decades out. I'm going to be climbing mountains and exploring the world by foot first. And on my list was climb a mountain. 2020, I was turning 40. I'm like, I'm going to climb a mountain for my 40th birthday and kind of launch that next decade of success and have that be my epic way of doing that. So I was training for a mountain named Ama Dablam, which is the big, beautiful mountain in Nepal, actually still my favorite climb. Mm-hmm. And my son had heard that as I'm a dumb blonde instead of Ama Dablam, and challenged me to climb Everest, because if we were doing hard things, then I should be doing something hard like climbing Everest instead of this I'm a dumb blonde mountain, which was super funny not at the time. And so I looked at Everest and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to climb Everest. And I'm going to show him whatever Everest is, we're capable of summiting. So I call a coach, he gets me ready for Everest, and this coach tells me to buy this book about becoming an uphill athlete. Mm-hmm. So I buy this book. In the front of the book is a story of a lady who got a Guinness World Record. This is COVID times, right? I'm homeschooling 7 children. I'm about to blow my brains out. I am not thriving at all. And I'm like, I could have done that. I tell the coach, I could have gotten a Guinness World Record. My coach is perfect. I'll think of one for you. I said, okay, fine. And then he's the one who came up with this idea of climbing the 7-second summits, which are the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. And I would be the first woman to do so, second human ever. And kind of sold me on the concept. It was 7 mountains, 7 continents, 7 children. It's a jackpot. How could I say no?
Oh my gosh, that's
right?
crazy.
Crazy. I had never slept in a tent before, and I said yes to this.
It is super powerful. And we know too that, especially in the world that we're in today, people are going to buy from people they know, like, and trust. And that's nothing new, right? But it really is powerful when you have the fundamental pieces in place in your business, and then you know exactly who you want to get connected to, and how to really reach through other people or get through other people, and then be able to find those people. So it's super, super powerful. But I love that you're coming from it from a servant's heart. You're connecting people with that servant's heart to give value. We all try to do that. That's why we do our business, because we care about people and we want to help them and make a difference in the world, right? So, yes. But you've actually turned this into like a business. So that's super valuable. So talk about that. How did you go from all of that to actually turning it into a business?
Realizing first the power of the network took me many years. Took me, 18 to about 48, probably 30, 35 years later to go, hey, I've got this network. Because I was serving, I call this serving before selling all the time. So I start doing that. And I tell people all the time, be transformational, not transactional.
Right.
And I can tell you the last 18 months, every person that I've met, I'm transformational. Now, it may turn into transactional during the conversation or down the road or an email. But here's the image I want people to see. Christmas, you're 7 years old. Christmas morning, you wake up earlier than you ever wake up because you know there's gifts under the tree. So you get up at 6 or 7 before your parents, you run to the tree, you open that gift. And you're super excited. You got a bike. But what has that 7-year-old done? In probably their school, they made a gift for their parents. Maybe it's a picture. It's the gift exchange. And every time you serve and I serve, I'm giving gifts out to people. What does the universe say? Or in my case, God's currency, it will come back to you. The problem people don't realize, and what's hard for them, is they don't know how, when, or where that's coming back. You just gotta have faith and hope, because I do, and I know it's happened, that will happen. But it's so much fun to get done with a call and somebody go, that's one of the best calls I've been on. We never talked money one time. We talked about how we could support each other. Here's the other thing that's super important. It's a networking tip that people miss out a lot of the time. I have a principle called the ASLA principle. I know it's a funny name. It's ASLA. Ask, shut up, listen, and ask.
How many books do you have back there behind you, Dave?
We have 4 books. We got 4 books. A Race for Impact. I'm a contributing author, so I get contributing author status. The other 3, Moments Matter, From Turmoil to Triumph, and The Limitless Life, that I personally wrote. So we got technically 3 of my books and 4 that I'm involved with. Yes.
Awesome. And where can they get those, Dave?
Amazon is probably the easiest place to get those right now. Or if they want them personalized, go to my website, DaveSandersonSpeaks.com, and I'll be more than happy to personalize the books for them.
Very cool. Okay, so let's dive into what you actually do now when the things that you talk about, and really how you are trying to impact companies, corporations, really people all over the world. You really talk about people first.
Right.
right? Valuing people first. And I think that's so important because have we just not lost sight of that?
Yep.
It's unbelievable. But your story, Dave, about being in the back of the plane, like God speaking to you, your mom speaking to you, hearing her words, and then you go moving to the back of the plane instead of trying to get out to help other people, it just speaks volumes. And so you walked that talk, so to speak, not no pun intended there.
Yeah. Yep.
But talk about how, talk about that. When you share about that when you're on a stage speaking.
Yeah, one of the things when I talk about some of the lessons from this experience, I share a story what happened back in, I think it was 2001, when I was with the head of security for a guy by the name of Tony Robbins, and I was traveling with Tony, and I had the honor to do that and watch his back, right? But I got to see and be with him and learn, right, all these things. But one of the big benefits that I had, I escorted his celebrities, his guests, right? And one of the guests was General Colin Powell. And this is when he was right after the Iraq War, right? So he had not become Secretary of State yet. So he was in that period. And I was escorting him. And usually my protocol, I learned, is just so be quiet and just make sure they get what they need to get to, right? And that was my protocol. And we were coming down the elevator ramp at the resort. And it stopped, and one of the people from the hotel wanted to get on with their big cart, right, with all the stuff. I said, please, could you just take the next one? He goes, no. Let him come on. I said, are you sure? He goes, listen, he's got a job just like you got a job, like I got a job. He said, people value people. And that taught me a great lesson about how he did his work, how that mindset is like, I value everybody. I don't care if you're the grunt. I don't care if you're the general. Everybody's got a job. We should value everybody's their position, what they've got to do.
Talk about through the years, you've been doing that 6 or 7 years. Is that right? 6 or 7. And then you decided to actually make a shift and a pivot in your business, in your practice, but you didn't exactly know if it could be done because it had never been done in a specialty practice. And that is you created a concierge model in a specialty practice. And to your knowledge, you don't know anyone who has done that. And so you're blazing a trail. Let's talk about that.
Well, it's interesting because I'm only saying this to make a point again about our culture in healthcare, that I ended up leaving this multi-specialty practice because as much as I was so fortunate to have a great group of people in an organization that really worked hard to treat its patient base, but I started not getting along with my partners. So, and it's an illustration, and of course, partly due to my own immaturity and the ability of myself and my fellow partners to be able to communicate well in conflict. I find that this is kind of symptomatic, I think, of healthcare in general and physicians in general and organizations in general that may not lead to the most ideal outcomes. And it's part of the problem, I think, why we're not able to fix the problems that happen in healthcare, because you need to really have good communication amongst a group of people that may not have the same viewpoints and same values. I mean, look at politics. I mean, it really is a problem.
Oh gosh, I was just thinking that when you said that. I was just thinking this is a perfect example of what we see.
So I did end up leaving because I didn't have the maturity and the skills to actually resolve those problems. And so I thought I would strike on my own and do things my way. And so I opened my solo traditional practice at that time. And even then that was considered a little bit off the beaten track because everything in medicine is now about consolidation and getting bigger and bigger because there's more, I guess, clout and power in bigger organizations in terms of negotiations and all that with insurance companies. So I did the opposite by pulling away and going into solo. But that went very well. And so I got busier and busier. And I realized, again, I was falling into the same model that I had at my other practice where the volume was just becoming more and more, not because I wanted the volume to be more and more, but it's just inevitable because of the needs of the patient population.
Right, just the evolution of it.
If there's not enough, providers to do this. So I wanted to come up with, and I realized I was spending less and less time with each patient. And frankly, I was afraid that there would be a mistake or something would happen where the patients are getting the best outcome.
Talking about 21st century leadership, one of the reasons I wanted you on here, John, is because so many times people are teaching leadership in companies, in corporations, but it's a lot of principles. It's not real real world time experience. It's not real action. And that's one of the things that you do very differently. Like you said, it's really a simulation. And so I really want to dive into that, because we know that things don't stick when people just hear things. We know people don't need information. They don't need more information. What really helps people is real time experience, role playing, things that are going to make it really stick. So that's what your whole model is around. And I think that's really innovative. I think a lot of people are not doing it to the degree that you are doing. They might have a little bit of it, but not to the same degree. I think mostly it's teaching, it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of learning, but it's not practical application.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I would absolutely agree with you. I have tried to, the simplest way of saying it is I have tried to take the ideas off the drawing board and put them in and create processes or practices that people can actually go out and do the next day. And it's more than just the simulations. For example, I've invented or created a strategic thinking process. I used that recently with a company in Texas. They're a fence building company, 7 locations throughout the United States. And they were miffed, if you will. They said, we're paying people money, we've got quarterly bonuses, and we just can't seem to find the missing pieces. We just don't understand what are we doing? We're giving them money and it's just not working. So I met with a group of 14, 15 people, including the general manager, the president of the company, and a vertical and horizontal cross-section of the people. And we found the missing pieces. We found what the problem was. And I'll just mention 2 things. One is they had no initial training program for new people that came into the organization. There was no training.
That happens a lot.
It means a lot because that's such a big requirement today across. And the second one was they themselves came to admit that they were not internally organized enough to in fact, optimize the fence installation work that they dole out, if you will, to subcontractors. So parts were missing, fences weren't there on time, locking systems weren't there. So they're reworking themselves, much to their credit, to say, hey, you know what? We have to be organized so that when we deliver a project to a subcontractor, they're ready to go.
So my expertise is in digital marketing. Right now, I work with public traded companies and issuers that are going public, whether it's through an IPO, through reverse merger. The challenge for a lot of these public traded companies is a lot of them have great stories, but they don't understand digital marketing. Digital marketing is complicated. There's so many channels, there's so many tools to be able to reach potential investors and tell their story. So I work with them on finding the right audiences. Who are the people that will be interested in their stock that can be potential investors? B, on simplifying the story. A lot of them get caught up on what they do, whether it's AI or is a biotech company that's specializing on building some new technology, and they make it incredibly complicated. So we simplify the story. We make it a value proposition that an investor can look at it and say, oh, I get it. This is what you do. This is what you bring to the table. And then C, we manage the process of that potential investor journey, from seeing an ad to coming into a landing page to reading about the company, requesting additional information, and then a nurturing process that hopefully will take that person with the decision of buying the stock and becoming a shareholder in the company. So that's what I do right now. We work with those public traded companies and we manage a lot of this entire process from beginning to end.
And how long have you been doing this particular thing in your business?
So I've been in digital for 24 years, and I have a huge background in digital marketing that includes anything from crypto to e-commerce. On the particular investor relations field, I've been doing it for the past 3.5 years.
Okay, awesome. So you have a great backstory that brought you to this place. And as you said, 20-something years you've been in the digital marketing space. But tell us a little bit, you can hear his accent, first of all. So tell everyone where you're actually from, and then give us a little bit of that story and how you came to America and what happened.
Yes, I was born in Colombia. I was born in Medellin, Colombia. I lived in Medellin during the cartel days, during the Pablo Escobar days. I lived homeless from the ages of 13 to 17. And I came to America through Mexico. Obviously, I'm a U.S. citizen today, but I was not at the time. Came here, started doing a lot of what the immigrants do, cleaning hotels, working in supermarkets. I moved into sales, which had been my background. This is how I managed to survive in Colombia. During my teenage years, I was selling products door to door, sold all kinds of things from cosmetics to insurance. So leveraging that expertise on sales, I started selling advertising, print media first. I went through an amazing training program from a company that paid for my education to be in advertising.
How you got into the sales piece of it and what you're doing now?
Sure. Going way back when, I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in writing, much to my mother's chagrin, changing my major from pre-med to writing. And I initially worked in television and then entered the corporate world for a little while, working in marketing for a company that was selling a brand new technology, which was being able to slap barcode labels on boxes and products going by on a production line. So I did marketing for them for a year, and they came to me and said, we really think that you could be successful in this company, but in order to do so, you've got to go into the field and be in sales. And I said, well, and this was late 80s. Tells you how old I am. But anyway, the president says to me, I'd like to offer you this job. I said, well, I've never really considered myself a salesperson. And he said, well, I want you to think about it, but it's a $10,000 raise. You get commission in the company car. I said, I don't think I need much time to think. I'll do it. But the funny thing about it was I found out very early on that was my place in the sun. So up until 2010, I sold technologies, typically new technologies, cutting edge technologies, in a number of different spaces. Manufacturing, supply chain, government, and the last full-time role I had was selling it into healthcare. So I've been in a number of different spaces. And in 2010, I decided to pull the trigger on being an entrepreneur, which was something I'd wanted to do for a while. And I started my own business, and it's a sales performance consulting business. My company name is Delivering Value. I didn't do that because I wanted to be clever. I use that as the brand promise. And I have a lot of fun with my clients in that, well, when they say, that's great, Don, I say, well, I've delivered value today. But I also, because of that,
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, well, feel free. That's fine. I don't mind. That we stand on the shoulders of giants, right, Ann?
That's right. That's right.
But anyway, because of that writing background, I've always wanted to write a book. And I really felt that I got to the point in my business with dealing with dozens of companies, more than dozens, 50 plus companies over the last 15 years, where I basically had something to offer because I realized that there were a lot of similarly held perspectives by entrepreneurs in the different phases of entrepreneur development. We all start as a solopreneur, right? We all start out on our own. Colonel Sanders sold chicken out of his gas station. I forget the guy's name from Nike, but he sold his tennis shoes out of the back of his car.
Yeah, a lot of them. Well, even look at Jeff Bezos. He started in his garage selling books for Amazon.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And then from there you go to the fact where it's just like, hey, I've got something here and I need to scale. So, and then after that, it's all right. Now that I've kind of scaled, how do I get this team to perform? So that's really what my area of expertise is. And this is what drove the book. The book's 3 different sections. Section 1 is for the solopreneur. Section 2 is what to do when it's time to scale. And then the third part has to do with sales vital signs and getting the best performance out of your sales team.
How did you originally get into this? Was that your college education? What happened there that got you into this?
I will try and give you the quick version of this.
The 30-second condensed.
Right, exactly. So I sort of fell into it. I was working in high tech. I was at Apple in the 80s, which is a completely different story. It was fantastic. But then I went into publishing, working at IDG, the magazines that had things like Macworld, PC World. I was at Publish because desktop publishing was a thing then. And so that's how I got into publishing. And little by little, I shifted from magazines into books and collaborated with a subject matter expert for one of the early For Dummies books on Macs and then on iPhones. And it kind of grew from there, making contacts. I had an agent, so she put me in touch with other authors, material experts to collaborate on their books. And at a certain point, I started looking for myself, clients that were coming to me outside of the agented contacts.
Now, do you still do ghostwriting or is your main business coaching people to write?
I do still ghostwrite. I tend to take on only one project a year. Okay. I worked for several years at Scribe Media, what originally was Book in a Box and then was Scribe Media. And I ghost wrote close to 20 books with them, although I was also coaching ghostwriters in that with them. But I prefer just working on one at a time. At one point when I was with Scribe, I had, I think, 13 projects going at once, and it was insane.
Right.
So one at a time, carefully chosen, and one that last year and again this year, I have organized my life so that I can take 3 or 4 months off during the summer. And so the ghostwriting projects need to sort of dovetail with that plan.
So who makes the best client for you, Barbara?
Someone who is willing to kind of put themselves in discussion. That I have a very tough love approach. I've worked with people who are the top of the top in their fields, and yet I'm not one to be starstruck. I mean, if I feel like something's not right, I'm going to say it.
Right.
You know, being critical is not very good in personal relationships. It's great for a book coach. So the client who is willing to say, "Oh, I hate hearing that, but you're right," or "I understand what you're saying, and this is what I meant to say." So someone who's willing to collaborate and listen to other opinions and then come to the best solution for the reader. Because my goal is not, of course, I want the author to be happy. I want the book to be well done, but I always have the reader in mind.
Right.
And so I'm sort of a proxy for the reader when I'm asking those questions.
That's how you help people. And who are the ideal people for you?
Well, I just celebrated my 46th anniversary of being what I coined the phrase psychologically unemployable.
I've been saying that for years. Nobody would employ me.
Right. I just can't work for you, but I love to work with you. So I've had a long and up and down career. About 35 years ago, I started full-time in training and speaking, hooked up with a guy named Brian Tracy back then.
He was one of my first mentors.
Yeah. I started as a distributor for his work, and then I created my own. So for the past 30 plus years or so, I've developed probably 50 training programs. I've trained 1 million people, mostly face-to-face before the pandemic and Zoom became a thing. And really what I do is there's 3 legs to the stool. The first leg is to actualize people, okay? Because everything starts with people. I know systems are big, AI is big, but in the end, people buy and people sell, right? You can't sell to an AI. You're selling to a human. So internally, in a company, and I've trained a lot of companies on values and how to align with your values. And I developed a model called soul, role, and goal. And what it is it's to live more fully in all 3 dimensions. And if you could find out what people really are motivated by in their soul, what role they play, you can really help to actually, that's the first leg. The second leg is to maximize the performance of your people, and your systems, okay? And we do that through looking at your marketing, sales, and service as one holistic process. I wrote The New Game of Business 20 years ago. 10 years ago, I started with this little basic, dumb-looking book, right? Gave away 3,000 copies. Made no money on the book. Made $250,000 on what was in the book. So I gave away the book to get the business. Got me to IBM, AT&T, a lot of companies. 10 years ago, I wrote The New Game of Selling. This was a #1 bestseller for 99 straight days, and without an Amazon bestseller campaign. And basically, it's a whole reversal of the traditional old game of selling. And I listened to some of your podcasts, which are really, really good.
Thank you.
And I aligned so much with your whole philosophy that the better you attract, the better you qualify, the better you convert, the better you keep your customers, the longer you have them. So we work with a lot of individuals and companies to show them how to play the new game of selling. This year, I'm coming out with the last of the trilogy, The New Game of Service.
Oh, nice. So I'm curious. So going from a CPA, which we're talking about a very analytical type of mind, even, and I know this came out on your podcast as we were talking about me helping people step into the spotlight and be seen. And you said, yeah, that was really hard for me. A CPA typically would not be someone that would do that, right? They're not someone they're more behind the scenes kind of people. I'm really curious, when you decided to step into this field, how you sort of assessed the kind of person you were as a CPA to now the direction that you wanted to go with this newfound passion and love that you have.
I don't think that the skills are different. The skills are basically the same. You're still analytical. Neuroscience is very analytical. Research is conducted in a certain way, right? And so, and you have to conduct it in that way. And so with research papers, I mean, you have to have the introduction, the method, and the discussion, and it progresses that way. And then you have to answer questions and new research, or research brings up new questions, right? And so that's for follow-up research. And then there's statistics that you have to do. And
that was perfect for you.
Yeah, I was a whiz at statistics. Like I remember taking a statistics course when I went back to university. So it was in my first semester back, I took the statistics course. And you know how often in university classes they put people on a bell curve? Mm-hmm. I totally messed up the bell curve because I got 100% on that test.
Wow. I love that. You're really right when you talk about what it takes to do this. So I would love to, I have some clients that work with CPAs, and this wasn't the direction I was going to have the show go, but now I feel like, oh, this could be really valuable for people. So I have clients that work with CPAs, and I have even worked with them in the past, and even people that are very much like CPAs, how to get them to really want to do bigger things in their business or want to grow their business. Sometimes their logical brain gets in the way of them doing bigger things and taking next steps. So I would love to just sort of hear, why do you think a lot of CPAs are hard nuts to crack, so to speak, when it comes to for business coaches working with them? That's a really pointed question, but
yeah, I can really only speak from a personal experience. Mm-hmm. I went into accounting because it was a safe profession. And that's what my dad drilled into me, or drilled into us, right? You have to find a secure job. Mm-hmm. And so there was security in it. And I was good with numbers, and I always liked math, although, the math in accounting is really not that difficult. But, and I like math. And so, yes, I mean, I did thrive in it for a while, mm-hmm. but it just wasn't fulfilling anymore. Right? I was a tax accountant also. I mean, I branched out into tax accounting. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't fulfilling when you ask a client, well, what is this expense about? And he says, what's the most advantageous answer?
How you got into doing what you're doing now, and exactly what you do now that is helping your clients.
Thank you for the opportunity, Anne, to be on your show.
You're welcome.
It's a real honor and a pleasure. The background, and you hit the nail on the head, eclectic, because I didn't go to my undergrad for what I do today. I just kind of stumbled upon and found it, or it found me. And the three areas I always use in the back of the word eclectic is kind of three pillars. One is supply chain operations. Mm-hmm. Second is facilities management, also sometimes referred to as integrated facilities management. And the third is technology. And I'll kind of go backwards to kind of give you the path, if you would, of how I fell into this. But technology and facilities management were actually the first two of the professional career as I graduated from, again, Radford, which was my undergrad, Radford University. And I got lucky, candidly, because my wife at the time was still at Radford. And so the first role that I got was at Virginia Tech, which mm-hmm. for those that geography-wise, that's 45 minutes away from Radford. So I'll start with, something greater than me gave me that opportunity to be within a close proximity, waiting until she graduated versus, a distance of a relationship. And then that opportunity, back to two of the three, back to eclectic, I just had an aptitude and an interest, and I didn't have kids. So I had extra time at hand. And I used that extra time, and this is kind of a unique thing, but it really happened. As I was managing Squire students in our Virginia Tech, first gig out of school, I wanted to hit a grand slam. But we used to get all kinds of complaints about this is broke, that is broke, I need this or that. Well, they didn't have at the time, and this shows age, this was many years ago, but they didn't have technology. Candidly, I didn't go to school because that's when the internet had just really come out to show back mm-hmm. to age. So I didn't have the luxury of ChatGPT. I didn't have a lot of the luxuries that today we do have.
Right.
So long story short, just to give you kind of a visualization, I got hammered with requests. And mm-hmm. one day the light bulb just went off, and I said, there's got to be an easy way to do this. So where I'm headed with this is kind of back to another background, but it's a dot connector. And so I walked into the lecturing hall of one of the rooms where the professors, do that to the lectern. And I looked up and I was like, bingo, I could probably build this in Excel. And that's exactly what I did. Because I went back down and built it from an aerial view looking at the lectern, and every seat had a highlighted color representing the type of maintenance or repair that needed it. That was game changing, something so simple. Then I started building what I call room setups and conference for special events, so that we wouldn't scramble kind of thinking about what the interested party wanted, rather give them a template. Hey, does this work for you? So all of that, though so primitive, was transformational back then, candidly. And that kind of spearheaded the next steps. And then I went into healthcare. state jobs are great for benefits, but very low pay. And so as I wanted to progress my career, the doors opened at Carilion Clinic in Roanoke, Virginia. And that was my pathway into healthcare for over 20 years.
I mean, AI is hot. It was a disruptor, especially we saw in 2024, it was a big disruptor. At least it became more mainstream for people. Obviously, it's been around for a lot of years. But all right, Chris, how do you run your business with AI employees? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So AI, just as you said, has definitely been a game changer, and it's taken different iterations over the years. First, it was OpenAI. Then we had Claude and Gronk and a lot of other businesses coming into play with their own large language models. And what we could do with these were only up to our imagination, right? First, we were asking it to write some poetry for us. Maybe it can analyze this report for us. And now they have access to tools. Now these AI employees and agents can now schedule appointments for you. They can also real-time web crawl URLs, so they can find information based specific to your business. So they're kind of a game changer, where we're now creating them with the purpose of give them a title, give them a goal. What objective do you want them to complete? And then basically they kind of walk through the stages of this process, like the stages of the buyer's journey. So some of the ways that we're using this is I just rebuilt a customer service AI chatbot for a nonprofit. This is a nonprofit that focuses on teen mentoring and leadership skills. So we kind of needed a customer service system to be able to handle the new inquiries, whether that was volunteers, whether that was donors. Maybe we need to provide them more information. So this is kind of just allowing the team to focus on more mission-driven activities, as opposed to kind of being stuck into, I have to craft this email and now I need to follow up. So AI is definitely a game changer. It's allowed me to run multiple businesses, host a podcast without feeling like I'm a chicken with my head cut off. So that's just one of the few ways that we're using AI. And I think it's helping a lot of businesses now just get speed to lead a lot faster. And again, just provide more information and nurture those leads.
What do you say to people that are really frightened by AI? I mean, I use AI in my business, not to the degree that you do or teach people, but what would you say to people that are just really fearful of it? And even people that are out there trying to get jobs that are really afraid of it. What have you seen? I always say with disruption comes opportunities, with obstacles come new opportunities, but I would love to know your take on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So AI, just like any other disruption or change to anything within our workforce, just as the same way the automation production line kind of changed the way that we build cars or even produce anything at all. AI it's a game changer, but it's also a tool in our toolbox. So just in the same way mechanics used to love having their hand-turned wrenches, and some of the older school guys would say, oh, I would never use one of those air compressors or one of those impact drivers. Okay, that's cool, but I could get this job done in half the time that you could, but you're welcome to use the tools that you have. So AI is great, but I don't think it's going to be, completely removing a bunch of jobs here. It's just going to see a shift in the market. So in the same way as we see, like the internet was brought out, a lot of people worried, okay, now communication might be a worry. Other service sectors might be impacted, but really this is just another tool in our toolbox to be able to do more, to produce more. And then I think it's going to allow us to open up more time for ourselves with ChatGPT, Claude, all these other AI systems that are out there. We're just finding new use cases each and every day as we kind of test the limits and push the AI to its boundaries.
I really want to talk about this because I rebranded too after my first year. It was called the Strategic Edge, and I realized as my brand evolved, Expert in You, it didn't align anymore, and I wanted to build up my brand even more robust. And so we changed the name of the show. Still doing the same things with it, but we just rebranded. And I think that's an important thing for people to know too: is don't be so stuck on what you're doing that if it's not serving you anymore, with where your business has evolved or how you have evolved, then don't be afraid to change that up. Do you agree with that too, Travis?
Yeah, 100% with podcasting in particular. And I think that you're not, like, the name of the game is consistency and improvement over time.
Yes.
And if you're not talking about something on the show that is somewhat interesting to you, it's going to be really easy to quit because the results don't come quickly. So if you're disinterested in something, you're only doing it because it solves a problem where you think it should be talked about, and you don't really have a ton of interest in talking about that thing, it's going to be really easy to quit. So make it difficult to quit. Make it to where you have other things to gain outside of just the audience. So if it's getting stale and you're getting stagnant and you just don't want to do it, like the point where I realized I needed to rebrand was basically where I started realizing that the appointments on my calendar for doing podcast interviews and stuff, I started dreading those times. Like I started being an energy and time suck for me instead of something that fueled me, which was the opposite of what it was when I started the show.
Right.
So I knew right around that time, I was like, I got to switch something up about this, or else I'm gonna be in that podcasting graveyard really soon. So I think it's really important to be talking about stuff that you care about talking about.
Yeah. And I also, so one of the things I do teach my clients how to launch a podcast if they don't have one, or even a lot of times they do have one, but it's not really bringing them clients, or it's not really building their business or their revenue. And I feel like a podcast kills a lot of birds with one stone. Like, you're building your visibility, you're building your authority, but you can also get really high end clients. You can get to premium clients, which is the way we use it in our business and the way I teach my clients to do it. And so it's important to know what your strategy is and what you're trying to accomplish with your show. So your goal was to really, build it up and get the listeners and all of that. And that is a strategy. It's not the only strategy. So there are ways to monetize it even faster than doing that, but you have to know what that's going to be for you. And a lot of podcasters, people that are selling podcast services, they are getting clients from having their own show, and then they're selling people back in podcast services. So there's a lot of ways to use it and what you're doing in your business. But
absolutely.
I think the average podcast, what is it? They only makes it to 10 episodes or something like 80% of them only make it to 10 episodes.
90% will never do more than 10.
That's crazy. The things that I talk about is so often, whether it's a company, it's a solo entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. They have all this brilliance and amazing stuff going on the inside of their business, but the outside of their business, I say they look like the cheap used car, not the Lamborghini. And as a result, they miss business. It's costing their business so much. I actually was a speaker yesterday, Michael, and I'm just around this exact topic: how to influence your market, how to influence them to buy, how to attract them, and not chase them, but getting people to say, oh my gosh, yes, this is what I want, right? So I love that.
Exactly. Most businesses, they don't know what their business is, basically. They basically have an idea. And from the beginning, when I started doing web development many years ago, the first thing I would tell clients is, you're looking at your business from the inside out. You're coming with a lot of foreknowledge and maybe baggage, and you're making a lot of assumptions that people coming from the outside in have no clue of. They don't know anything about you. They don't care.
Right. They do not care about you until
they're
you
here to get something. They're here to buy a ticket, or they're here to buy a widget, or they're here to get some information. You have to serve that up first. You have to take care of their needs before taking care of your ego. Because I remember sitting in meetings, and every department wanted their own section of the website. And there'd be this argument as to, well, how necessary are those departments to actually running the business?
Bring in business, right?
They're more like infrastructure, which doesn't mean they don't have any value. They're just it's a matter of prioritizing.
Right. From the marketing standpoint, it's not.
No. And the funny thing, the really ironic thing is, I would watch those same clients look at somebody else's website, and they suddenly turned into customers.
Yeah.
A completely different viewpoint about, why are they showing me this? I want to buy XYZ, and I'm trying to tell. Yes, you see, that's how your customers feel.
Right.
Your side. So you really got to. I always like to put myself in the customer's shoes. I am the advocate for the customer. That's my role. I'm basically there to speak for them.
Yes. Yeah, and what's the saying? You can't read the label when you're inside the bottle.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes.
Yeah, and that definitely rings true to marketing. Again, outside perception is very different from inside reality. And I love that you're coming at it from that perspective and showing them. And you're right. What is it you buy? And you have to think about things that way when you're setting up your own business. But look, it's hard to do it for yourself. You need that outside perspective, that outside expertise, and they don't need to be doing their own websites if they want to do bigger things. This is a big disconnect.
I'm sorry to do it, but I'm glad that. I occasionally have clients apologize. So their website is not meeting the mark, and they apologize for the shape it's in. And I'm going, don't apologize. That's why I'm here.
Right.
You don't apologize to a doctor for being sick.
How did you really get into that for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So originally from Detroit, Michigan, or just outside of Detroit, and that's the Motor City. And so I fell in love with cars, and I was also really good at math. So I decided to be an engineer, study engineering, and worked for Ford Motor Company in Visteon, building F-150s and Mustangs for several years. But I always wanted to be with where the people and the money were. And I knew the path to success, or at least what I was told was the path to success, was to go back to school and get my MBA. So I did that. And after business school, I ended up working for a $40 million marketing consulting, data technology consulting firm, selling into Fortune 500. So I really had that corporate experience with, and then I had the experience of doing B2B sales at a really high level, really successfully as a W-2 consultant. And so I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So in 2017, I ended up starting my own firm, kind of help still working with revenue and small businesses, which started, there were kind of 3 phases of my business. And this might be interesting to your audience. The first thing I did is I recognized that I needed to have clients and revenue quickly. So I was like, look, I'm just going to call up all the CEOs that I knew and say, hey, I think I may be able to help you.
Yeah. That's actually a great way for people to get their first clients is, the people that they worked for or are already in their network. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still the fastest way to revenue. Like when I work with my clients, I'm like, look, dude, the money is with the people and you just need to call them up and talk to them and create conversations and see how you can help them. So I did, my first offer was what I call business development as a service. I was really doing kind of some fractional sales work for the companies. And what that enabled me to do is really build up my own systems and expertise around sales and understanding what was required to make sales. That led me to helping my clients build out their sales systems and working with coaching their teams and understanding how much lack of structure and clarity there was within those businesses. Like they didn't have to be at like Ford Motor Company, but they definitely wanted to be, improved. And they ended up struggling a lot with sales and revenue, consistent revenue growth because of the way that their businesses were set up. So from there, I did start doing mindset. And then around 2021, towards, when we were kind of recovering from COVID, I ended up doing a big market research study and working for a larger firm. And that kind of led me to the insight that CEOs were the best positioned person to drive revenue in their business with or without a sales team. And I wrapped my business around supporting CEOs to be successful with their own.
What happened when the recession hit? I went through the recession too. I actually expanded when everybody else was shutting down. So that was a whole nother crazy story. But what happened there and how did you pull yourself out of that? So I would love to talk about that.
Yeah, the end of 2006 is myself and there were several other partners that kind of got together, want to create a business, essentially teach people how to do like what Robert Kiyosaki talks about in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, how to get out of the rat race, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like my message today. I just call work optional instead of, retirement or whatever. But the problem is that our main target market were all real estate flippers. So they were people that were flipping properties left and right. And by the summer of 2007, the banks weren't really announcing anything, but they were tightening their lending requirements. So also it was harder for these guys to flip their real estate properties. And so what would happen, they would say, hey, you know what? Money's just a little bit tight right now. We're getting delayed. It's, we were, before in like 2006, it was like 2021, if you remember 2021 real estate, right? It was like, you just put it on the market and minutes later, your property sold.
They'd have 10 or 12 offers. Yes.
Exactly. You got competing offers and everything. So it never sat on the market. Well, 2007, because all of a sudden they were slowly tightening their lending requirements, it was getting harder and harder to find a buyer. Plus prices were going up too, in 2006 going into 2007. So these guys couldn't sell it. They couldn't pay us. We had all these new startup costs and everything we're doing. We're putting out this marketing and we're putting on a radio show. We're on AM Talk Radio and doing that and paying lots of money for that because we didn't have podcasts quite yet, and all this stuff, so it was high overhead. Everything's going on. Plus my lifestyle had creeped up because I was enjoying how much money I had coming in. And so it was like that perfect storm, but in a George Clooney way, right? Like where they all die. Sorry, spoiler alert for you if you haven't watched Perfect Storm. But it was like that, and so we were sinking fast. We didn't have a variety, like diversity of marketing, or markets to be into. Right. And so we were having, people on our team quit left and right because eventually they were just going broke. They're like, hey, we got to get paid. I wasn't getting paid. I actually went from, being financially independent to being on welfare, literally. Get on food stamps and everything else. And it was just a rough couple of years until we were able to finally pull out of it. About 2009, when we started breaking into the chiropractic and dental markets. And actually, I changed what we were coaching because I felt like a fraud trying to teach people how to get out of the rat race when I was back in it. So I stopped doing that. And instead, people would come to me, they're like, Chris, I know the stuff that you know. I would love to pay you, but money's tight right now. The recession's made it really tough on us. I wish I could pay you. I just don't have the cash.
Right.
In the back of my mind, what I was thinking was, I wish I was in your situation right now because I was over $1 million in debt. I was like in the hole, about $15,000, $16,000 a month that I was short between business and personal expenses versus my income. So I just told him, I wouldn't say verbally, of course, hey, I'm more broke than you because that's business suicide. So what I did say, is I did say, well, if I could find the cash, would you pay me? I said, well, yeah, of course. I was like, great. And so I'd show them almost artistically, like creatively, the very things I had learned from my own situation, trying to avoid bankruptcy. I was showing them to do the same things and with their cash flow and things like that and ways to free up money.
Give us some insight. Give us some insight there. What were you showing? Because cash flow is a thing for you. It's a thing that I do too, but it is a thing for you. So yeah, what were you showing them?
Yeah. So like, for example, the simple stuff was like tracking your money, because when money was abundant, it's like air. You never count the number of breaths you take until the air is taken away. Money's the same way, right? Like if you have money coming in, you're not really worried about it. But when it's not there, you worry.
I love how you were able to actually make that shift and go into a completely different career utilizing those same skill sets. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think everyone has a natural talent. Some people are great musicians, great painters, or great mechanics. My husband has this brilliant engineering mind. He can take anything apart and put it back together.
Oh my gosh, he and my husband should meet. I think, yes, mine's the same way.
And my thing has always been words. I've always been a natural writer. That was like a hobby of mine when I was little kid. I was writing, and I always had note cards, and I collected journals. And so my fascination with the human mind and behavioral drivers combined with my natural abilities around writing and communications, it makes perfect sense to me now. It took me a while to get here, especially looking at the student loan debt and everything. But
yeah,
I'm happy to be where I am today doing what
there is that, right? I love it though. It's so great. So your method, one of the things I have to say, so when I first got to know Ray, I saw some of the results that she was getting, and I was so impressed by the results that she was getting, and very organic results. So one of the things that really impresses me about you and what you're doing in your company is that you are able to help people not just get better results in their marketing, not just pick up market share, but you're actually able to cut their cost for marketing and really bring those costs down. I mean, marketing is a huge expense in businesses if they're burning up money, right? If it's not working the way it could work, or they're losing opportunity because their marketing's not really dialed in the way it could be. And I love how you're able to not only help them pick up the market share, but you're able to really help them cut those marketing expenses and get better results, so they are not missing the revenue that they could be making. And then to have those leads pre-sold before a sales team gets them, or a call is, I mean, who doesn't want 80 to 90% pre-sold leads? Like that's everybody's dream, right? In their company.
Yeah, exactly. And with one client in particular, so they were spending $10,000 a month on Google and LinkedIn ads and Facebook ads and things. What we did was we cut that down to zero. So they were no longer spending any money on ads. And we did.
Okay, everyone, hear this. This is gold. Let's repeat that. From $10,000 a month, barely going in the trash, going down the drain, to zero. Okay, now tell the results.
Yeah, so they had this money set aside and budgeted for ads. And we just stopped all of their spending. We reallocated that money towards doing a deep dive research into their current market, into their buyers. We learned so much, including that they were trying to sell products as managed services provider, and yet the market all thought that they were a cybersecurity solution provider. So there's this huge disconnect. So we learned so much, and then we completely transformed their top and middle funnel messaging, which was overly bottom heavy with bottom of the funnel messaging. It was all book a call, book a demo, talk to us. It was all backwards. So all we did was learn and fix that top and middle funnel messaging. And as a result, within 6 months, they went from getting 2 inbound leads to 41 inbound leads per month.
How did you get into the business broker side of things, going from the marketing side? How did that happen in your business? I think everything evolves sort of naturally, usually, but.
Absolutely. So my marketing business was 20 years old in November of 2024. So that was a big celebration for us. And in 2018, I started as marketing director for a business brokerage in St. Louis, Missouri. And I was helping coordinate their website and stuff, their social media, their email blasts, and all those marketing things that they needed to be able to push stuff for that business. And the owner came to me and we talked about me becoming a broker. And at first I was like, no, I got a lot on my plate. Plus I'm doing all your marketing. So we got somebody else trained to do a lot of the day-to-day marketing for them. And I kind of transitioned over on the brokerage side because I was already training brokers on how to get new leads for themselves. beyond the ones that our marketing team got for them. So it was a natural transition because half of the process I already knew because I was already training their brokers on how to get sales. So once they got the sales, I just had to learn the part of what do we do once we got it. So, and that for me, that was an easy transition. So.
Oh, very cool. So let's give some takeaways here. I always love for people to be able to walk away with something. How do brokers get more leads? What do you do with them? How do you help them do that?
So, I really, it's mainly about networking, getting to know people. And I don't just like to know somebody. I like to get to know them really well. I like to learn more about them. And I think that's no different in any sales position that you have. You're going to have a better rapport with people if you actually get to know them. You learn their dog's name the next time you talk to them and you ask them how Fluffy's doing. Remember that they have kids or grandkids and ask them about that. So I really think that personal relationship takes you way further than just the everyday car salesman type salesperson. So, when you get those leads, I'm really good with follow-up. So I like to reach out to people. I like to make sure that I'm staying in constant contact with them if I can. And I think that's just really important. So I think that's probably one of my biggest takeaways on what to do with your leads is to just not forget about them, even if they weren't an immediate yes right away. I had a lady that called me earlier that I haven't talked to in 2 years, and now she wants to sell her business. So it's all about cultivating, just like a farmer. They may have different crops that run different better cycles on different parts of the year. So you're just learning, who your target market is and how figuring out what's best for them at the time that they need it.
But Michael, how did you get into what you do today?
Sure. Yeah, I have been in 5 different industries leading up to the one that I'm currently in. I am a keynote speaker. I run workshops. I also do private consulting on the side, basically to try to get teams to gel, for corporate leaders to understand better how to build trust and great culture within their workplaces. So, and of course, it's all based on kindness, because if you want to build trust, you have to have lots of very organic kinds of kindness.
And how long have you been doing this in the marketplace around this particular topic?
Only a year at this point.
So this is fairly new for you. Have you been speaking and doing things in business for many years, or did you come from a corporate background? What sort of brought you to where you are?
Sure. One of my back stories is that I used to work in planetariums. So I was the guy who would have the laser pointer and would be pointing up, there's Orion's belt, and over there is the moon. And so I've been a speaker in front of large audiences, since 1991. And then my most recent enterprise that I was in corporate America in pharma. And I was a computer programmer, but I was always doing these really fun things where I was building communities and trying to get people to hear each other. And so I ran an academy for new programmers who came into pharma and who needed to know how to do it. And a large component of what they learned was, what are the basics? How do you get heard? How do you make sure that you hear others, and so forth?
So what is it you actually sell then, Michael? And then who are your ideal clients?
The ideal client is somebody who believes that kindness and trust and psychological safety are the keys to building their better teams. The teams that are more innovative and more efficient, more productive. Those are typically the ones where you have a lot of trust within the team, where just a quick glance at a teammate, you know what the other one's thinking. So I help people infuse that, and I do it in a number of different ways. I do the private consulting where I will sit with a leader and help really understand what are the problems that you're facing right now. I also do keynote addresses, so I will fly to a location and give a big keynote address, sometimes with a book signing, sometimes with a Q&A. It just really depends on what that client needs. And then, of course, workshops and that.
I love it. So how much do you travel in your business? I work with a lot of speakers, and I speak as well, but I don't like all the travel. So I tend to like to speak more locally, unless it's really a good engagement.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, you have to really love the travel, and I do. Fortunately, I really enjoy it. I travel, several times a month during the busiest season. When it's not quite so busy, it'll be, maybe 3 or 4 times in a quarter. Especially around Christmas and that.
So, do you have sort of a core program or a core process that you take people through when you're working with them, whether that's their teams or the leaders that you're working with?
Well, I wrote a book that was published early last year called In Kind. And it basically, each of the 9 chapters has a set of exercises, reflections, activities that corporate leaders can infuse into their teams. And I can help them with that, depending on what level of interaction they really want, how intensely they want, to have this change happen quickly.
A lot of people don't realize they do kind of lump sales and marketing together, and they don't realize they are actually two very separate, really divisions. But here's a problem that I see inside of companies, and that is the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So if the marketing is not bringing good leads, it doesn't matter how good the salespeople are, right? And if the marketing company is bringing good leads and the salespeople aren't good, the end result is the same either way. So the two have to really cohesively work together. The leads have to be quality and the salespeople have to be quality to go ahead and turn those into revenue for companies. So they are two separate processes, but they do need to work together. And I think a lot of companies, maybe they're starting to figure that out, but they are a long time. They lumped it together, and then, the marketing people would blame the salespeople and the salespeople would blame the marketing people, right? So I like that you actually kind of do both, or you're kind of working in both of those areas with people when you're helping them.
I work in the sense that I look at their marketing and their collateral material, and I ask them, like, how do you think this should be utilized? I can tell you from the eyes of a salesperson how the sales team would probably use it, but is it effective messaging, or things like that. So I tell people, Luminary Catalyst doesn't design logos, does not design websites per se, but we will help tweak messaging for websites. I believe that a call to action should be in everything you do, every post, every email, everything. How you and I met. We met through LinkedIn, and it was this, let's meet. It's that sense of urgency, that call to action that you and I have from just our backgrounds, that a lot of marketing people, they make it pretty, but there's no call to action at the end.
Absolutely. Yes. I love that you're talking about that. What would you say, and we're going to get into your story in a minute, but just on that note, what would you say to people that say, you're always selling, you're always putting a call to action, or you're always, we kind of hear that, especially in the online world. We hear that in the online world more than businesses offline. But what would you say to that? Because here's my theory. We're in business. We're here to do business. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, right? All right. It's to waste my time. And yes, I'll give you value. And yes, I'll show up and I'll share and I'll do all of those things. But at the end of the day, I am a business. I'm trying to grow a business. That is my purpose here. It's not just to build a lot of friends and get a lot of followers, which is what a lot of people kind of think about. But I would love your take on that.
I feel like the call to action could be a simple one. Like, let's get together and offline this and let's go have coffee and see how ways that we can collaborate. That's a call to action.
Yes.
And it's not that I want your business, but you could be a great compliment to mine. You could be a very good compliment to my clients. You could be what elevates my game to my clients by having another incredible expert that I can put in front of them, right? You're cool by association. That's what I tell everybody. I'm cool by association. If someone's looking for an accountant that specializes in something important or a specific niche like construction or restaurants, I can be that solution. I'm like, you know what? I know someone, and I can't promise that they're exactly what you're looking for, but it gives you a good starting point. But I wouldn't have that person had I not gone to the call to action of let's meet for coffee. Let me find out what areas you specialize in. And then you start mapping out your center of influences. That's business development.
The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Although I share strategies, ideas, and success stories based on real experiences, results are never guaranteed. Every business is unique, and outcomes depend on individual effort, market conditions, and many other factors. By listening, you agree that I and my guests are not responsible for your results or actions based on the content shared.
So that wraps up another episode of Expert in You Podcast, number 301. And next week, we'll be back with our regular show. So thank you. Share it. We always say sharing is caring, right? And we would love for you to subscribe to the show if you have not done that yet. So God bless you. Have an amazing day and go rock your business.